Papoose, you have my lawyer's information. If you can't afford to retain a lawyer, since your lawyer that the number you gave us has not been retained yet, I told you I'll paper it. If somebody over there that loves you wants to paper it, great. That will make me happy. Everything is signed and ready to go. I don't want nothing. I'm not even asking for child support. My daughter's school, her babysitter, her nanny, her gymnastics, her swimming, her dancing, her healthcare, her all of that. I take care of it like I've always done. I don't need any.
I just like to express this one thing. All these girls be like, thank you to my man. And I want to say, to my hands, thank you to my hands. To my hands, thank you to my hands. Listen, for me knowing how to fight and me training hard, I make millions of dollars just from beating people up. So, to my hands, thank you to my hands.
What you just heard sounds powerful on the surface. A woman declaring she doesn't need anything. No money, no child support, no help. But statements like that rarely exist in a vacuum. When someone repeatedly insists they are independent, self-sufficient, and untouched by outside influence, it often signals that a different story is already circulating behind the scenes. A story that demands correction. A narrative that must be controlled before it solidifies into public belief. Claressa Shields wants the world to know she stands on her own, both literally and financially. There's no doubt she has earned her success. Yet strength doesn't eliminate contradiction, and confidence doesn't erase context. What complicates this story is not what Claressa says. It's why she feels compelled to say it so forcefully. This is not merely about money. It's about positioning, about distancing herself from assumptions people are already making regarding her relationship with Papoose. This is where the story becomes tangled. While Claressa presents herself as untouched by dependency, the timeline of her connection with a married man tells a far more complicated tale. One full of mixed signals, blurred boundaries, and carefully chosen words. Emotional access often comes before clarity. Explanations shift depending on the audience, and one woman speaks as if another woman no longer exists. At the center is a man who never publicly defines the situation, yet reaps the benefits of every version of it. This is not a story about clout. It is not about jealousy. It is not about who makes more money. This is a story about emotional imbalance, selective truth, and how silence can be as strategic as speech. Once you look closely, the crux becomes impossible to ignore. Every word, pause, and claim reveals a deeper tension. A carefully managed narrative where power, independence, and reality collide, leaving the audience to question what is truly hidden behind the surface.
I said I love him. I love having his support. You know what I'm saying? His support is like very, very different from what I've had in the past, and how he speaks to me and stuff is very different. There you go. We deserve each other.
At the center of this story lies a contradiction that never quite resolves itself. Claressa Shields has repeatedly insisted that she does not lie for clout, that the truth always comes out, and that she has no reason to fabricate, exaggerate, or distort reality. Her achievements, she says, speak for themselves. On paper, that sounds reasonable. But public credibility isn't measured by confidence alone. It's measured by consistency. And that's where the cracks begin to show. When you line up Claressa's statements across time, platforms, and contexts, the story doesn't progress in a straight line. It bends, adjusts, and sometimes quietly rewrites itself. The first version of events was simple, even harmless. Papoose was just a fan, a brief interaction, a handshake, a compliment about her beauty. That was the narrative presented publicly, a chance encounter, nothing more. Later, details emerged that complicated that framing. Claressa herself acknowledged that she initiated direct contact. She reached out privately. She offered VIP tickets. That alone shifts the dynamic. This was no longer passive admiration. This was intentional access. And access always carries implications. At that point, the story stops being about a fan moment and starts becoming about emotional proximity. Not a relationship yet, but a door opening. And once that door opens, boundaries matter more than ever. This is where Claressa's explanations begin to collide with documented reality. She has repeatedly claimed that she could not see Papoose because he was with his family and child, that she was not allowed access, and that circumstances, not choices, kept them apart. But those statements do not exist in a vacuum. Long before Claressa entered the picture, boundaries had already been established within the marriage itself. Remy Ma had publicly and privately made it clear that their child does not spend time alone at the family house without her presence. If the child is there, Remy is there. If Papoose is with the child, it is typically within Remy's household. That matters. It means that the idea Claressa was blocked because of a child arrangement does not align with how the family structure actually functions, which raises the question Claressa never directly answers. If Papoose was unavailable, who exactly was he unavailable with? This becomes more uncomfortable when Claressa later attempts to clarify the situation herself, stepping into the comments to push back on what she calls misinformation. She states that Papoose was with his mother and family, that people are assuming things that aren't true. Then comes the contradiction. Other timelines suggest that Papoose was, in fact, with Remy Ma, even if only briefly. And that detail changes everything, because Claressa begins subtly, but tellingly referring to Remy as an ex-wife. That is not a neutral mistake, it is a psychological one. Legally, socially, and factually, Remy Ma was still Papoose's wife. No finalized divorce, no public separation announcement. The label X was a mental construct, not a legal reality. And when someone mentally removes a spouse from the equation before reality does, disappointment becomes inevitable. At this point, the internet begins doing what it always does, filling in gaps. Some theories suggest manipulation, others suggest mutual benefit. A few claim that Claressa was being used by both sides, but those theories fall apart under scrutiny. Both women are financially independent, each with her own platform, income, and public standing. There is no incentive for a coordinated scheme, no material advantage gained through deception. What remains is not strategy, it is imbalance. And imbalance is far more dangerous. Claressa appears emotionally invested in ways that Papoose does not publicly reciprocate. She speaks in emotional terms, he remains largely silent. She defends, he benefits. She explains, he allows.
It'll be 2 years next year in September. We at the end of the year. Some of this stuff is just so old. You know, it's so old to talk about, to bring up, to keep harping on it. It's like they're separated. She got somebody too. Mm-hmm. Like, don't act like it's just over here. Mm-hmm. Like, she's happy, we're happy, and that's it. Like, I don't know what.
Is it cordial? Is it cordial, or you just?
It was corny. It's always corny in social media shit. You know what I'm saying? Who wants that? Who wants to be a part of the circus? So I just felt like it was corny.
This is where the tone shifts, because that statement isn't about love. It isn't about clarity. It's about closure. Forced closure, the kind that dismisses questions instead of answering them. By calling it old, the implication is that the audience is late, that curiosity itself is inappropriate. But timelines don't expire simply because someone says they should. And notice what's missing. No confirmation, no definition, no ownership of overlap, just emotional minimization. A suggestion that everyone should move on, even though the situation was never publicly resolved to begin with. Skepticism grows when visual evidence enters the picture. At one point, Papoose and Remy Ma are seen on the same day in the same location. Shortly after, the video disappears. No explanation, no clarification, just removal. And removal is rarely accidental. Once people begin comparing timestamps, locations, and narratives, silence becomes louder than denial. The internet doesn't need confirmation, it only needs inconsistency. From an analytical perspective, the contrast is stark. Remy Ma appears emotionally finished, not angry, not dramatic, just done. The child remains the connection, not the relationship. Her energy suggests closure, not conflict. Claressa, in contrast, appears deeply attached, expressive, defensive, invested. She speaks with intensity, loyalty, and protection, traits often mistaken for strength, but frequently rooted in vulnerability. Then there's Papoose. Consistently undefined, consistently uncommitted in language, consistently positioned to gain. He presents authority without accountability, protection without promise, presence without permanence. Claressa appears drawn to that calm, controlled aura of someone who never has to explain himself. That dynamic has a name: opportunism, not financially but emotionally. Remaining where benefit exists, leaving when it doesn't, saying just enough to maintain access, saying nothing when clarity would cost something. When one person operates from emotion and the other from calculation, the outcome is never mutual fulfillment, it's delayed disappointment. Claressa believed in emotion, support, and gestures. Papooses' actions, timing, silence, and continued alignment with his wife and child tell a different story. One of obligation over affection, structure over spontaneity. If you want to know where someone's heart truly lies, don't look at interviews or captions. Look at holidays, family time, where they are when they don't have to perform. That's where truth lives. By the second act, the silence is gone. Not because clarity arrived, but because celebration did. Carefully worded statements and defensive explanations gave way to public displays. Luxury, laughter, affection in full view. At first glance, it seems wholesome, but placed against unresolved questions, the display feels strategic. Emotional validation replaces explanation, signaling insecurity rather than strength. Meanwhile, Remy Ma remains quiet. No sparring, no clarification, no counter-narrative, just consistent silence, suggesting resolution or detachment. Observers note the contrast. One woman amplifies emotion, the other withdraws. Claressa is emotionally invested to the point of defense. Papoose celebrated without defining the relationship, and Remy Ma tethered only by responsibility, not affection. That triangle creates a power imbalance that no luxury can mask.
So y'all knew my man had to come through for the baddest, for his queen. He came, Louis Vuitton travel right bag with the travel with the... You didn't have to give me. This is nice.
Bricks.
Whoa. Okay. Wow. The gym bag?
Yeah, it's a duffel. So when you travel.
Fuck that. I'm taking this motherfucker to the gym. I'm putting gym clothes in here. I'm about to go to the gym Lou bag. It's like, yo, she rich for real. Yeah, I come to the gym Lou bag. Pat got to come for Christmas.
Yeah, you said, man. Claressa Shields, Papoose, you see the love?
I do
You
that.
just dropped the bag on her.
Wow.
Literally. Bag, money, and some Louis Vuitton bags. You see how happy she... This is a beautiful black love that you see here, man.
Oh, I can't wait.
Love to see this. Her next fight is going to be amazing. All this joy that she got. Man, hey, shout out to Claressa Shields, shout out to Papoose. We love to see this, man. This is a beautiful type of love. You can really see the love. You see the joy in her face with this. Like, look at this. This is a beautiful...
On the surface, this moment is framed as joy, as affirmation, as proof that everything is fine. But beneath the praise and applause, the subtext tells a different story. Because love that needs constant validation often isn't secure. And when gifts are highlighted more than boundaries, something is being compensated for. This is where the analyst's lens becomes unavoidable. Papoose's role throughout this situation has remained remarkably consistent. He does not deny. He does not confirm. He does not correct. He allows narratives to form around him while staying just quiet enough to benefit from all of them. That is not passivity. That is positioning. By never fully committing to one version of events, he maintains flexibility, emotional access without accountability, affection without obligation, support without sacrifice. Claressa, meanwhile, appears drawn to what that represents: stability adjacent authority, protection without exposure, the illusion of certainty in a situation defined by ambiguity. But ambiguity always has a cost, and that cost is usually paid by the person who feels the most. This becomes especially clear when you examine timing. At one point, Papoose and Remy Ma are seen in the same location on the same day. The video surfaces, then disappears. No explanation, no denial, just removal. And removal matters, because removal implies awareness, and awareness implies risk. If nothing about that moment conflicted with the narrative being presented elsewhere, the footage would have been irrelevant. But instead, it vanished. Once something is removed, speculation replaces silence. People begin asking questions that never receive answers. Why erase it? Why allow one narrative to grow while another is quietly buried? That is where the opportunist label begins to stick. Not because of money, not because of fame, but because of emotional leverage. An opportunist doesn't need to lie. They only need to withhold, to let others interpret, to let emotions run ahead of facts, to benefit from devotion while staying detached from consequence. Claressa appears to have invested emotionally under the assumption that reality would eventually align with her belief that Remy Ma was already in the past, that public acknowledgement would follow private connection. But reality has a way of correcting assumptions. Legal status still matters, family priorities still matter, and silence, when maintained long enough, becomes its own answer. The hardest truth here is not betrayal, it's misalignment. One person operates from emotion, another from obligation, another from advantage. When these forces collide, the outcome is always the same. Heartbreak for the one who believed. This is not a cautionary tale about fame or clout. It's a lesson about reading actions instead of words. About watching where someone goes when cameras aren't present. About noticing who they choose during holidays, family moments, and unguarded time. That is where loyalty reveals itself. Claressa supported publicly, defended fiercely, and believed deeply. But belief, when not matched by commitment, becomes vulnerability. And Papoose' greatest advantage may not have been what he gave, but what he never had to give at all. In the end, love wasn't denied. It was simply never fully chosen. By now, the story stops pretending. Facts don't need to be argued. They speak quietly, consistently, without mercy. At some point, every narrative reaches a breaking point. Not because someone confesses, not because a receipt drops, but because the contradictions become too loud to ignore. And in this case, the contradiction is devastatingly simple. One woman believed she was being chosen. One woman already knew she wasn't, and one man never corrected either of them. That is the real scandal. For months, the public watched Claressa defend a story that never fully existed. A version of events where timelines were flexible, labels were optional, and legal reality could be replaced by emotional certainty. She spoke with conviction, loyalty, and the kind of passion that only comes from someone who has already invested her heart. But conviction does not equal truth, and loyalty, when unreciprocated, becomes exposure. While Claressa was explaining, protecting, and justifying, Papoose was doing something far more dangerous. Nothing at all. Silence became strategy. And in situations like this, silence is never neutral. It is power. A married man allows another woman to speak publicly as if the marriage is over, never correcting her. He allows her to refer to his wife as an ex while still legally married. He allows speculation to grow, narratives to form, and emotions to deepen, all while remaining comfortably undefined. That is not confusion. That is control. Control doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it looks calm, polite, even distant. And that is exactly what happened. Claressa wasn't chasing clout. She was chasing certainty, and she mistook silence for reassurance. Meanwhile, Remy Ma did the most dangerous thing of all. She disengaged. No emotional reactions, no social media warfare, no public pleading, just distance. And that silence told a completely different story. When someone is emotionally done, they don't argue, compete, or explain. They move on quietly, and reality eventually catches up. The turning point wasn't a post, a gift, or a statement, it was a disappearance. A video, a location, a shared space on the same day, and then deletion. Deletions don't happen unless something needs to be hidden, delayed, or strategically shifted. People notice the timing, the overlap, who was where and who wasn't supposed to be. Suddenly, the old news excuse collapsed. If the story was truly over, there would be nothing to hide. An opportunist doesn't promise forever. They promise presence just enough to keep someone invested, just enough to keep doors open, just enough to avoid accountability. Claressa gave emotion. Papoose gave ambiguity. Remy Ma gave silence. Only one of the three paid a price. The tragedy isn't betrayal, it's imbalance. Claressa believed love would eventually force clarity, but clarity never came because it would have required sacrifice. And sacrifice was never on the table. This is why gifts mattered. Not their value, but their timing. When explanations fail, performance begins. Luxury becomes distraction, affection becomes spectacle, joy becomes proof. Proof of what? That someone smiled, that someone delivered? None of it answers the real question. Who is chosen when no one is watching? The answer has been consistent all along. Family structure, legitimacy, and priority mattered more than emotion. Claressa didn't lose because she loved too hard. She lost because she loved someone who never intended to choose publicly. And the man at the center never had to lie. He let everyone assume. That is the most dangerous manipulation of all. Allowing a future to be built in someone's mind while quietly maintaining a different present. The fallout is inevitable, and it arrives slowly, quietly, painfully. Claressa believed she was standing in truth, that loyalty would be rewarded with clarity, that silence meant protection. But silence in stories like this is rarely protection. It is delay, avoidance, power disguised as calm. While one woman defended and emotionally showed up, the other stepped back. Not because she lost, but because she already understood. When someone is truly finished, they don't argue. They let the narrative collapse on its own. This isn't about who loved harder. It's about who had more to lose. The most dangerous position in any relationship is believing you are chosen while the other person is still deciding. Heartbreak is engineered not by lies, but by half-truths and unanswered questions. The story refuses to die because it's not gossip. It's recognition. Recognition of power, of silence, and of how emotions are leveraged when one side stays undefined. Believing someone wants you is not the same as being chosen. In the end, no one had to expose anything. The story exposed itself. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Behind posts, gifts, interviews, and carefully chosen words, one brutal truth remains. Emotions were invested where commitment was never guaranteed. The fallout arrives quietly, painfully, and persistently. Claressa believed she was in truth. She believed loyalty would bring clarity. She believed silence meant protection. But silence was permission, for her to hope, for Remy to disengage, for Papoose to walk away untouched. This isn't a love triangle. It's a case study in imbalance. Commitment was never chosen, and the silence that followed speaks louder than any declaration ever could.